I'm delighted to introduce our next guest this evening, Karen Breslin, who is also running for Senate in this primary. Karen, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can I be heard?
Of course. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so
Good.
much for this opportunity.
No, we're so
Appreciate it.
grateful you're joining us here tonight. I know we only have limited time, so I'm just going to jump right into it. What motivated you to run for the United States Senate, and what do you believe Colorado needs the most from Congress?
Well, I'm a political science professor. I've been teaching politics for about 30 years, American government in particular. And when Trump emerged on the scene, and takes office in 2016, it was really obvious to me that our system was broken. And that had been clear to me for decades, but it became very manifest with the election of Trump. You don't get a Donald Trump as a viable presidential candidate if your political system is working properly. And so when he is reelected, it's just horrifying. Pardon me. But what really got me, off the dime, as it were, was I think it was February 7th when I filed my FEC paperwork, was his actions in creating Doge, his attacks on federal employees, his attacks on due process and immigrants, the trans community, DEI, all of that in just the first couple of weeks of his administration, and really even in the first week. And I was fearful that people would not understand the severity of that action, of those actions, and the danger that we were facing. Because the problem is, if people don't catch the abuses as they happen and really stand firm against them in the moment, then they can escalate. And that's exactly what did happen. And so just yesterday, the young woman from Colombia who was illegally taken off the street and put somewhere just was released after 1 year with no due process. That should not happen in the United States of America. And so I decided early on to use my platform as a candidate for the US Senate to try to fight to save our democracy, because I was afraid the political class would just think of Donald Trump as a policy problem rather than as a democracy problem. And I think that that's been largely the case, starting to shift after Minneapolis. But for many, many months, the Democratic Party, leadership has treated Donald Trump as a policy problem rather than a threat to the very existence of our government. And for me, as a lawyer who's litigated some constitutional cases, watching Donald Trump, thumb his nose at the restrictions on his power, taking funds that Congress allocated and appropriated to the state of Colorado, destroying government agencies at will as if he had that authority, the actions against immigrant communities, creating this paramilitary force that is ICE. All of this was just shocking to me. And everything that I understand about democratic systems of government is that, again, you have to be immediately responsive to those kinds of risks, or you run the possibility of losing your system entirely. And so that democratic erosion is incremental, it seems, because we're living our lives. But we are not in the same country today as we were a year ago. And, Donald Trump takes no shortage of liberties with his power, and the courts come in and try to stop him, but he just ignores the court orders. And so, if we want to restore our system of government, we are absolutely going to have to find our voice in Congress, in the US Senate, in the House, as well as all of us on the street. And that's begun to happen, but we're behind the curve now. Right? And we really need to get on top of this. And that's what keeps me up nights, because all of the policy conversations we can have are important, of course. But if we set the precedent that the president is beyond the control of Congress and beyond the control of our Constitution, we have fundamentally altered the system of government. And that's really what has happened under Donald Trump.